let's make some cranberry pecan stuffing for Thanksgiving. Yeah, it's that time of year. Stuffing is everywhere. But before I go any farther, I'm just gonna say, stuffing, dressing, I just call it stuffing. This is not gonna be an in-the-bird stuffing, so technically it's a dressing, but I call it stuffing. I've always called it stuffing. If you wanna put it in the bird, you could, but this is an out-of-the-bird stuffing. Dressing, stuffing. Now, we're starting with 3 loaves of bread here. Now you can see this is sort of just a general French bread. This is more of a seed sort of whole grain bread, and this is a sourdough bread. We're starting this the day before we're gonna make it because we need to dry this out. Because we're not using the box stuffing where it's pre-dried cubes like that, we need to dry this out. We're gonna do that in 2 stages. First, it's gonna go in the oven, then it's gonna sit out overnight on the trays and just sort of dry out even more. So let's get started. I'm gonna start with my French bread first right here. I'm just gonna cut it down into smaller pieces, breaking it down. And honestly, if you wanna rip it, you can. Just try and get those pieces not too big. Once I have my general pieces here, just gonna kinda cut them some more. And as these pieces are done, I'm just gonna put them over here on a baking tray. As I mentioned, like these pieces, they're so soft you could literally just tear them if you wanted to. But I've got my knife out, so I'm gonna keep doing that. And we just keep cutting. Now, there are no rules to the types of bread you can use in this. Choose whichever bread you like. I was actually looking for a nice loaf of rye bread, but couldn't find one, so I went with that sort of seeded whole grain. So here's my tray of bread. I just like to kind of spread it out a little bit. Now, we're not putting any seasoning or anything on this at this point. I know some people like to do that, and if you do, that's fine, but all the seasoning and flavor is gonna go in when we add our other ingredients and mix this together before we bake it in the oven. So let me set this one aside. Let's get our other 2 loaves done. So now for my sourdough and the seeded whole grain, we're just gonna start cutting. Same thing, they just go over on a tray. And you can cut these pieces as big or as small as you want. Now for our sourdough. And remember, you don't have to use 3 different types of bread. I just like that because it gives some differences in the texture and the taste. You could use all the same if you want. There is our seeded whole grain and our sourdough. Now what we're gonna do is, the oven is preheated to 200 degrees. These 2 trays of bread are gonna go in there for about 2 hours just to dry out. Now, check them after an hour. Every oven's different. Yours might be a little bit hotter and you really don't wanna toast them. We're really just wanting to dry them out. So it could be anywhere from 1 hour to 2 hours. So I'll see you back here in 1 to 2 hours. Well, here is one of our trays. It's been going about 1 hour and 10 minutes. You can see here it is dried out. It's not toasted. If you want to toast it, you can, but I prefer this method. So now this is just gonna sit on this tray overnight on the counter, same with the other bread, and it's gonna dry out further. It's gonna be even more little crunchy, crispy than that. And then tomorrow, we'll take all our bread and build our delicious cranberry pecan stuffing. So our bread sat out overnight, continuing to dry, and here it is in this bowl today. Nice and dried, you can hear that. Now we're gonna set this aside because we have to prep the rest of our ingredients for this stuffing. So I have 3 ribs of celery here. I'm gonna take off the very ends here. And I wanna split each one down the middle. and I'm just going to chop these into smaller pieces. Just like that. Next up, a nice big leek. Now I want to take the green tops off here right down to about this point. You can see where it starts to turn sort of from dark green to light green. Now you can use the rest of that I just took off, but the flavor in this is what I'm going for. Take off the end, and I want to split this down the middle too. And then I want to split these down the middle. And we're going to cut these just like we did the celery. Just like that. Got a nice big carrot here. Just want to cut the ends off. We're going to give it a quick peel. I'm going to break this down into some smaller pieces so it's easier to work with. The bigger ones like this, I want to cut in half. And then those in half. This one's pretty small. We don't need to cut that all the way in half. And we're just going to chop these just like the other vegetables. All right, I'm going to finish chopping the carrot, and then we're going to move on to our onion. All right, I have a pretty good sized white onion here. Peel off that outer layer. Just want to get the core out of there so we don't have any of the green stuff. And for this, I want to be able to get it into small pieces. I'm cutting into those wedges first, and we're just going to chop. Just like that. All right, it's time to head over to the stove. All right, I have my skillet on the stove right here, and the first thing I want to do is toast up our pecan pieces. This is 2 cups of pecan pieces. My flame is on medium. And we just want to get these until there's that a little bit of an aroma coming off of them. We're not trying to cook them or burn them, just toast them. Only takes a couple minutes. Ah, got that nice smell. Now we're going to add a stick of butter. This is 8 tablespoons. That's unsalted butter. I want to start letting this melt down here. Going to add our onions. We're going to add our carrots, our leeks, and our celery. We're going to add a tablespoon of dried sage, a tablespoon of dried thyme, a teaspoon of rosemary, 2 teaspoons of granulated garlic, 2 teaspoons of a coarsely ground black pepper, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. Stir everything around here. Make sure that butter melts. I'm going to turn my temperature down to medium-low. Because what I want to do here is I just want to soften all the vegetables, get all these flavors coming out. This is smelling like Thanksgiving. All right, we've been going for about 8 minutes here. Everything is looking good. I can feel that the carrots are softened nicely. The onions are softened. What we're going to do now is we're going to dump that mixture into our bowl of bread. Then we're going to add our cranberries and some vegetable broth. Now I'm going to add my cranberries. I have 2 cups of dried cranberries. You might see them sold in the store as craisins, something like that. And I'm just going to start mixing in with my spoon because this is still really hot. It's going to take a while. We're going to take our time. I have the biggest bowl that I have here, so it is not a super tiny bowl like usual that I use, but it's still going to be a little touch and go until this bread starts to absorb the moisture and soften. We'll start adding our vegetable broth in just a minute here. So now I'm going to start adding my liquid. Now, I have 32 ounces available. It shouldn't take all of that. I'm going to add a cup to begin with, and then after that, I'll add smaller amounts depending on how it feels. This is really about texture and feel at this point. And in a minute, once it starts softening, I'll just be using my hands to mix it because you can get a really good sense of how much moisture you need. This is just our vegetable broth here, 1 cup going in. Just gonna start working this around so I can feel as that moisture is absorbed. Anybody that escapes goes right back in. And occasionally you want to give the bread a squeeze. You're not trying to smash it, but you're trying to feel how much moisture has been absorbed. We don't want this to be dry. We also don't want it to be soggy. That's why I like adding little bits at a time. If necessary, if it gets too wet, you can add some more bread pieces, even ones that aren't toasted, but I like to go really slow so I don't have to do that unless absolutely necessary. I know it's going to need more liquid, but I'm just wanting to feel around here, get as much distributed as I can before I add more. I'm going to add another 1/2 cup of my vegetable broth here. And keep mixing. Really get down to the bottom because you want any of those really wet pieces that might have grabbed onto the liquid as it drains down. You want those to come up to the top so everybody gets an even dose of our liquid. I can feel it absorbing, but like if I take this piece and squeeze it, there's still sort of structure in the center there. Same thing here, so definitely we're gonna add another 1/2 cup right now. I love big chunky stuffing like this. So I'm going to press this down right here. I want to get it nice and compact. All right, now I'm going to cover this with a piece of foil, and we're going to come back in 15 minutes and check it and see how much moisture has been absorbed and see how much more liquid we might need to add. See you back here in 15 minutes. Our stuffing's been resting for 15 minutes. Let's take a look. I just want to get in here and feel this again. Feels pretty good. It's absorbed a lot of moisture, but I can still feel a little bit of stiffness there. So I'm going to add another 1/2 cup of our vegetable broth. And work it in. And this is the point where I want to sort of start squishing it now because I want to really feel that moisture in there. And by this point, we should have a pretty good distribution of all our ingredients in here too. And this is also a good point. If you want to take a taste, see if you need to adjust seasoning for salt or pepper. Nothing in here needs to be cooked, so this is safe to eat. That's tasting really good. I think it still needs about another 1/2 cup of liquid. I have a feeling that'll probably be enough. That is feeling pretty good to me. Again, it's not dry, but it's not mushy. Take those pieces and feel them. Make sure they've got enough moisture. Different breads will feel different. The sourdough may feel different than that seeded whole grain. The French bread will be much softer once it gets liquid in there. The crust will be a little stiffer, but that's the variety of textures in something like this. And again, the amount of liquid you add really depends upon your situation, the types of bread, the humidity, everything like that. So it's by feel. There's no specific amount. All right, I'm going to cover this again. It's going to sit for another 15 minutes, and then we will get it into our pan so we can bake it. See you back here in 15 minutes. So I have my baking dish here. This is, I think, a 9 or 10 by 13, and I'm just going to grease this up with some butter. There's already butter in our stuffing, but I always like to give a little bit of extra so we don't get too much stickage. And now we fill it. Make sure we have a good base layer in here without a lot of voids before we fill the rest. And right about now, your oven should be preheating to 350 degrees. Make sure we get good coverage here. Now that butter we just used, that unsalted butter to grease the pan, I want to put about, I don't know, maybe 2 tablespoons on top here. So I'm just slicing some off. I'm going to put it in a few places. All right, let's cover this with foil. Now this is gonna go in the oven for 35 minutes covered like this. Then we're gonna uncover it and it's gonna go for another probably 20-ish minutes, but really it'll depend upon what the top looks like. We want a little bit of browning, but not too much. So let's get this in the oven and I'll see you back here when it's time to uncover it. All right, we've been going for 35 minutes covered. Let's take the foil off and get it back in the oven. Oh, looking good. You can see where that butter has melted there. All right, this is going back in for about 20 minutes until the top looks the way I want. Then we'll go ahead and get it out. Here is our cranberry pecan stuffing, fresh out of the oven. Now, I'm not going to cut into this right now. I want to let it cool for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to top it with some of those dried cranberries and some pecans just for a little bit of added look and flavor. Then we will have a taste. All right, so this has been cooling down for about 10 minutes or so, and I just want to take some of our dried cranberries and sprinkle them on the top so we have some that haven't been cooked. Just a few here, we're not going to go crazy. Other thing you could do is you could take some fresh cranberry sauce and dollop some on top here or on your serving pieces. I just want to put a few fresh toasted pecans on top, some pieces that I toasted earlier. Another thing you could do with these is instead of using just regular toasted pecans, you could get candied pecans or make them and top it with those. That would be terrific. All right, let's cut in. Sometimes with stuffing, it actually cuts out, kind of like a piece of cake or something. A lot of times that happens if you're adding egg to it so it has like a binder. Generally, I don't like to add egg, so I just take pieces out, and if it holds together, great. If not, it's still going to taste great. I can see this one's coming apart, but that's all right. We'll get more. Let's get down in here and try and get a little bit of everything. Cheers. Cranberry is one of those flavors that's associated with Thanksgiving. In here, it's just terrific. Not overly sweet, but it just adds that extra punch of great flavor. Any stuffing is usually very hearty, but with this you have so many great ingredients that bring extra flavor. The carrots, the leeks, the celery, the onion, and those toasted pecans, and the cranberry, just terrific. And to me, one of the secrets here of making this taste so good is using fresh bread and going through those extra couple steps to dry out the bread yourself. Pick your favorite breads, use it. You will not regret it.